Burrows with the City of Boston's Arts Council.
Thanks so much. I'm Julie Burrows, the Chief of Arts and Culture for the City of Boston, and it is my honor to welcome you, everyone coming to AFTA, to the City of Boston for the first time ever. Yay! We're just so delighted to be hosting AFTA and to share with you our vibrant arts scene, and also to share with you Boston Creates, Boston's cultural plan that is the result of an incredibly participatory process that has happened over the past year. We literally just came from next door announcing our first stage of implementation and a new vision for the city, a vision that will promote arts and culture, support artists, and perpetuate a collaborative atmosphere where we really see a culture shift in the city of Boston. It is my honor to work for Mayor Martin J. Walsh. He is an arts mayor who has really made the arts a top priority. I want to thank him for his leadership and thank him for making me the envy of all of my fellow arts commissioners who wish they were working for a mayor who calls himself the arts mayor. Without any further ado, please help me welcome Mayor Martin J. Walsh.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you, Julie, and Julie is doing an incredible job here in the city of Boston, and I'm going to talk a few minutes about it. I want to start by thanking the wonderful singers from the Boston Arts Academy that were here earlier today. I know that all of you won't have a chance to go and see that school, but it is absolutely an incredible school here in the city of Boston. When you heard the students singing here today, that's just a taste of all of the great students that we have in that school, so I want to thank them. I want to thank Bob Lynch and everyone at the Americans for the Arts for choosing Boston. And on behalf of the City of Boston, I'm delighted to welcome all of you here to this beautiful city and to your annual convention of the American for the Arts here in Boston. And just for you, I ordered up great weather for the next few days. And I also want to just encourage you, please, shop, spend, enjoy the city. I know that artists aren't always the best paid, but just whatever you have, please feel free and enjoy the city. But truly, it is a beautiful weekend in the city of Boston. There's so much excitement. And I can tell you, just walking next door to our announcement for Boston Creates, I walked by, and a lot of you in the hallway on phones and talking in groups, and the energy here in this hotel today is just incredible. So I want to thank you as well for being here today. The conversations that you're all holding this weekend advance and enrich the conversation that we've been holding in Boston and continue to hold in the months and years ahead. It's a time of growth opportunity in our city, but we have hard challenges from inequality to infrastructure. We can't sit back and hope that growth will fix everything, and we have tremendous growth in our city right now. We have to shape this growth to become a more vibrant, healthy, and equitable city. That's why we're in the midst of something called Imagine Boston 2030. It's our first citywide planning process in over 50 years in Boston. The word imagine was chosen for a reason. We're asking every Bostonian to use their imagination to add their dreams to a collective vision. Since this framework for the future depends on imaginary and creativity, it's going to depend especially on having a vibrant arts and culture sector here in Boston. So we have taken the arts to center stage. This week we've completed our Boston's first cultural plan in many years called Boston Creates. It was a result of a year-long engagement with our artists, our culture sector, with Bostonians from every neighborhood and every community. Together we created a 10-year vision for supporting arts and artists, breaking down barriers, sharing cultural capital more equitable, and recognizing our cultural diversity. Earlier today, I made some announcements about our first concrete step towards these goals. You're going to learn more about them from Julie and many other members of the Boston Creates community here. So instead of pointing out every single initiative, I want to leave you with an underlying concept that I think we can apply in any city. And Julie mentioned this already, it's a cultural shift. When I first started talking about our cultural plan, our papers were eager to find out what my vision for the arts was. And I said to them at the very beginning, it's not my vision, it's our vision. And I was criticized for not having a vision. But I truly felt that the vision for the arts shouldn't come from the mayor's office, shouldn't come from the governor's office, shouldn't come from the president's office. It should come from the people. It should come from the people and work its way up. The cultural shift that I'm talking about is moving the arts to the heart of our conversation in ways that truly make a difference. It's a shift that brings the public, private, nonprofit sectors into better alignment. But it's also a shift that occurs deep within our working of our city government. Along with appointing a cabinet-level chief of arts and culture, which we had once in Boston 25 years ago, we are weaving arts into the roots of our most basic systems and services. That means artists are embedded in city agencies, from the police department to public health. It means housing set aside for our low-income artists in public developments and building up a framework for the future. It means workforce development to get low-income folks into careers in the creative industries. It means bringing arts into development decisions, zoning reform, public works, and transportation improvements. We are making the arts an integral part of city government because I believe the arts are an integral part of city life. I believe just like our parks and our ball fields, our churches and our community centers, our stores and our restaurants, the arts must be visible and accessible in the fabric of city life. Everyone must be able to find the outlet for arts in the physical landscape of our city, across both public and private spaces. And arts must shape in the invisible city as well. Our feelings belong, our feelings of pride, and also our cries for justice that can help drive change. John F. Kennedy said, "The arts at the center of a nation's purpose." I believe that the arts are at the center of a city's purpose. And if I hadn't believed it already, the arts community in Boston made sure I believed during my campaign for mayor in 2013. The forum, when we ran for mayor, we had probably 100 forums. The forums that we had in the arts was the most well-attended event of the entire campaign. The contributions of our civics disclosures have only grown stronger. From our great foundation and museums, to our neighborhood nonprofits, to musicians and painters in every corner of our city, to our teachers and their students. This community is passionately, creatively, and relentlessly advocating for the power of the arts to change the lives and build stronger communities. I know you won't need any encouragement to patronize our art scene while you are here, but I'll encourage you just the same. It's literally a new day for arts and culture in Boston. I could not be more proud of my city's arts community for rallying at this moment, and I could not be more excited for you to move this conversation forward in Boston and the United States of America. And I truly want to thank you for choosing Boston. I guess it's kind of ironic that as we're putting this plan together, we weren't quite sure about this conference when we started. But we didn't time it the way it worked out. It just happened that way. So I truly want to thank all of you in this room for the great work that you've done in your cities. Because many of you and many of your cities, we have drawn inspiration from you. And we want to continue to draw inspiration from you. And I want you all to enjoy this weekend, have a great conference, and draw our inspiration from each other, because it truly is a very important aspect of our country. Thank you, and have a great weekend.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from Bank of America, Rena DeSoto.
Hello, everyone. It's Rena DeSisto, by the way. I didn't develop that car 40 or 50 years ago. And given that I've been introduced by voice of God, I will thank God for that lovely introduction. I want to congratulate Mayor Walsh and Commissioner Burrows on their new program, Boston Creates, and Bob Lynch and all of you on this fabulous conference. I really am delighted to be here. This gathering gives me hope, as does your agenda. Why will become clear in a few minutes, but I want to congratulate Americans for the Arts and all of you for convening on such important issues, such as the economic impact of the arts, equity through the arts, empowerment of individuals through the arts, arts as a change driver, and the impact of arts on civic life. These are all lofty and important topics to discuss. In fact, they're the very reasons why Bank of America has undertaken to be a leading, if not the leading, corporate supporter of arts around the world. So to use an artistic metaphor, we are all singing from the same song sheet. But you may ask why a corporation, a financial corporation no less, would support the arts in such a far-reaching way. Well, it's all about ESG, environmental, social, and corporate governance, which is shorthand for the comprehensive approach we take to conduct ourselves in our business and be responsible for our impact on the environment and on society. For Bank of America, supporting the arts is a big part of our ESG program. We believe that the arts matter. That's why the little booklet that you have there is called Arts Matter. It's a point that we want to continue to make. They're a powerful tool to help economies thrive, to help individuals connect with each other and across cultures, and to educate and enrich societies. But then, you knew that. What you may not know is that we've been a leading supporter of the arts for many years. I think that over the past 15 years or so, we have sponsored more than 100 exhibitions worldwide. We have lent more than 100 shows from our own collection, and we've contributed hundreds of millions of dollars to nonprofit arts organizations to create access, to help conserve artworks, and to help nonprofit arts institutions develop and deliver what it is they do best. There are some that raise concerns about a corporation's involvement in the arts. We don't meddle, we just enable. So you can see I feel very strongly about the arts, and I'm blessed to work for a company with enlightened leaders such as Brian Moynihan, our CEO, and Anne Finucane, our vice chairman, who understand the importance of the arts in all of the ways I just discussed. My own love for the arts began as a young person. In my preschool years, I endured opera recordings during Sunday dinner. Little did I know that a seed was being planted. But the seminal moment was my parents' gift to me of a trip to Italy at age 14. I am so grateful to my parents for that gift, a gift that keeps on giving. It has made my life richer and my view of the world more comprehensive, comprehending, and I like to think compassionate. This is the element of the arts I want to talk to you about today. Our commitment to the arts, and in this case I mean all of us in this room, is especially important right now. In light of the continuing tragedies that are afflicting our society and other nations around the world. These acts represent the worst of human nature: hate, intolerance, destruction, contempt for the freedom that, among other things, nourishes the creative imagination that has made this country and other civilizations great. I'm reminded of the devastating news from last August about a Syrian archaeologist who was beheaded by Islamic State killers. His name was Khaled al-Assad. He was 83 years old. He apparently had refused to disclose the location of some pre-Islamic antiquities. His murder had another element of hideousness to it beyond contempt for human life, and that is contempt for human achievement and human history. This man, who devoted his entire life to discovering for posterity that same human achievement and human history, was gruesomely murdered for it. The arts can mean many things to different people. To me, they are a record and a reflection of the intelligence, creativity, passion, devotion, beauty, emotionality, rationality, and irrationality that we as human beings are capable of when we are our best selves. And if you are a believer in God, you will believe that this is where these gifts come from. They are our glory, our nobility, our dignity, and our humanity. Yes, artists come and go. Some have established themselves among the pantheon of great artists. We see their work in museums and theaters and on the printed page. Other artists have produced work that we still view with awe, and yet their names have been lost to history. Some artists have gone in and out of style, so to speak. And we can argue from here to eternity about what makes art and what makes great art. But no matter where you come out on balance, you have to acknowledge that art, like history and the written word, is our record and a manifestation of the gifts that make us human. It is up to organizations like Americans for the Arts and for funders like Citi and American Express and Bank of America and so many in this room to keep at it, to remind us of this fact. Now more than ever, we need these civilizing influences, these reminders of what is divine in humans and what we must always strive to be. This is why we must make the argument for STEAM versus STEM in education. We must give full rein to the arts for their power to create a society that is more comprehensive, comprehending, and compassionate. Greater minds than mine have understood the connection of creative imagination to human progress, and I quote, "I'm enough of an artist to draw freely on my imagination, which I think is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world." And that greater mind is Albert Einstein. Some people say the arts are not as important as other things, such as education, hunger, healthcare. I say that they are wrong. Let us work together to convey the understanding that the arts are education, history, philosophy, science, math. They are the product of our human ability to imagine, and yes, they circle the world. You are truly doing God's work. There's glory in it, there's love in it, and I think it's not too much to say our salvation lies in it too. Thank you. Thank you. And now it's my pleasure to reintroduce Bob Lynch.
I'm back. Hello again, everyone, and thank you, Tarina, for that wonderful set of comments. It's a pleasure to be introduced by Rena and to be able to briefly celebrate the great work of Bank of America. Today's plenary is all about the impact of the arts on communities, and in Bank of America, as I'm sure many of you know, you're seeing the single largest corporate funder for the arts in America. Thanks. We're very grateful, and thank you so much. I also, even though the mayor has left, I want to say thanks to the mayor for his inspirational comments and what he's doing, and doing that with Julie, who's over here, and I think that it's great to see the city of Boston working in this particular way. I want to thank them for this, and also I want to thank her team and the wonderful local host committee who have been essential in creating what I know is already a great convention. I thank you for that, and also We've hit 1,100 members, and we're still registering people, the biggest registration we've had in 5 years, and so that's exciting. So first, a reminder, I want to see all those cell phones and tablets and laptops on and burning up social media. Make sure that you tag Facebook, Twitter, Instagram posts, and it is to this up here, hashtag AFTACon. No other of those sites that you've seen up there are correct. They go to my mother. But this one, this is the right one, so please do that. Same thing with YouTube. To make our programming as accessible as possible to those who couldn't physically be with us here, we're live streaming all of our plenary sessions plus 4 breakouts on your YouTube channels this year. So tell your friends and enjoy. Welcome to Boston, my home state, as many of you know, the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the great city of Boston where I went to high school. Is there anyone here from Massachusetts? You know, if you'd all shout this out, I mean, I heard it from the mayor. He said, "Arts," the way it's supposed to be said. Could I hear it from everybody from Massachusetts? There you go. This is the first time we're bringing the conference here since 1980, and it is great to be back. My mother was very excited. She's 92. We grew up 20 miles south from here. She's in a town called Stoughton, Massachusetts. And I told her we were going to have all these people, and there was going to be press about it all over the country. And she asked me the same question that she's asked me for my 40 years in this business. She said, "Will that be appearing in the Stoughton Chronicle?" Thank you to the City of Boston, our local host, Boston Cultural Council, Boston Arts Commission as part of the city, founded in 1890. Think about that. The oldest named entity in our work, the Boston Arts Commission, founded here. And so it's great to be here, and I thank you to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and to the Massachusetts Cultural Council for the great help that is happening here. I also already thanked all of the folks on page 40, and they're up on the slide behind me. But just remember that in today's world, where not everybody has to commit to helping the arts, these people did, and they do, and they deserve a special round of applause from you. I also want to say a special thanks. I can't do my job without the board and the staff of Americans for the Arts, and I just want to thank you guys for the work that you've done here. I appreciate that. And a particular shout out to Clay Lord, because I saw the late nights and this is the result, so thank you so much. And of course, all of you, hardworking local arts agencies, arts organizations, state arts agencies, and advocates, cultural workers, and arts leaders. And I spent the last 2 days going around to all of the pre-conferences and to the councils hearing the stories of the work that you're doing. Congratulations. We are here to celebrate your work, and like this particular public art event created in Cincinnati, Arts Wave in Cincinnati, and Arts Wave just broke its own record as the biggest United Art Fund fundraising campaign in America. That's the kind of story. How do they do that? And another would be a small place like Lanesboro, Minnesota, 754 people. But they have made themselves a town-wide arts district and an arts campus. So there are great stories here from many, many different kinds of people. Conference highlights here: risk, controversy, action, vision, skills, vibrancy, equity, accessibility, power, innovation, failure, design, community, leadership. These are just some of the words that pop out in the different sessions that we have going on here, and so that's exciting. And the conference itself spans everything from my own little rogue session tonight at 9 p.m. about the genius of the amateur, the genius of the self-taught, and how we harness that in our work. 50% of the American public now make art on their own. They are makers because that's the way they want to consume. Launched today by a Tony winner, talking about democracy and citizenship, and bookended on Sunday by a closing session featuring MacArthur Fellows, award recipients, talking about the genius of the artist's role in remembering the past and celebrating the future. Now, you are here in your work, your success, fulfilling what John Adams, who lived about 10 miles from here, prophesized, the vision for a better America. He said he had to study politics and war so that his children could study liberty, to have the liberty to study mathematics and philosophy, to give their kids the right to study painting, poetry, and music, and architecture, statuary, tapestry, porcelain. That is a vision of your great work that was envisioned by our founding fathers right here many, many years ago. We try to help you with that by doing these things, and I won't go into them, but professional and leadership training, people that can help you or you yourselves, advocacy on behalf of resources for you and what you do, information and research that will help you, and then finding non-arts partners like mayors or like business leaders or like foundations who can help us with that work and making sure that they know a little bit more about the successful things that you do. I've seen your great work in places all across the country that I get to visit each year, about 40 different locations. I've seen things that are in the wake of disaster, and we have too much of that today, whether it's here in Boston, the marathon bombings, or Baltimore, Freddie Gray, Ferguson, San Bernardino, Charleston, Orlando most recently, and even across the sea in Paris and Brussels. But I also see the great work that you're doing in raising resources, for example, in order to bring the arts as a healer or bring the arts as a joyful part of life as well. In a lot of the places that I just mentioned, you, arts leaders, have gone to bat in the aftermath of these things and provided the arts to be there for healing and for communication. And a shout out to all of those cities who are doing that kind of work. But places like Cuyahoga, getting the cigarette tax passed, for example, or Cincinnati's Arts Wave funding goal. They're big pieces of how we go on, and I applaud you for that. And then cultural plans themselves, like the one here in Boston, like the one in New York, like ones all across the country, are ways that we're seeing people deal with the issues and the problems of the 21st century, which all you have to do is turn on TV to hear about, but you have to work on helping to solve them in your own communities. So I thank you for all of that. One of the things that we do, that many of you do, is public art programs. And just as an example, some exciting public art here, everything from things that reflect history, like this particular statue commemorating the 54th Division, all-black division of soldiers in the Civil War here on Boston Common is where that is, to Janet Eckelman's work that you see in different parts of the city, strung between buildings high up. Exciting, different ways of animating cities. The arts reflect us. They tell us who we are and how we got here, and perhaps provide a pathway to go forward. And we see that reflected in the old images of Norman Rockwell or the new work and vision of Misty Copeland. We had many good programs this year. One of them, our Nancy Hanks lecture, featured John Maeda, and he said, "Pull in the world and make sense of it. Strong voice for arts education, for STEAM, as was mentioned by Rena, for creativity in the workforce." Every day, you and your organizations prove that the arts encourage our evolution and drive us to make our communities healthier, more vibrant, and more equitable. We spent the last year talking to you, holding new community visions forums in 8 states, 8 regions across the country, talked with 1,000 of you who serve communities, others that you sent us on to as well, to map out new ideas, new models, new threats, and new opportunities for communities and the arts in the decades to come, for you and for communities that haven't yet embraced the arts but want to. And do people value what you do? Well, our public opinion poll this year tells us that 9 out of 10 Americans believe that students should receive an education in the arts throughout their education, that it's critical to their future success. 8 out of 10 Americans believe that students should participate in the arts throughout the community as well, and not just students, that it is a community value throughout the community for the arts to be part of that community. That's really important. We know that a majority of Americans approve of doubling the federal spending in the arts and want continued arts funding by local and state governments. You know, that's great to know as we push for those kinds of things, that we have friends in community. And this particular study, 3,020 people in America, a cross-section of America, not arts people, was amazing in the solidarity behind the idea that the arts are valuable. And American voters, interestingly, are more likely to vote in favor of a candidate who wants to increase federal spending on the arts rather than against those candidates. So we will be at the Democratic and the Republican national conventions this summer, lucky me, and we'll have a forum in both places with about 300 delegates, and we will learn from them, and we will be able to influence them. We already have, as you may know, with the original 21 presidential candidates, we got statements about how they value the arts, what their opinions are from all of them on our website. We're in a contentious election season, though. A contentious time in this country in general, it seems. The country is in transition on many fronts, and the world also in flux. Well over half of the population believes that the arts are a positive experience in that troubled world, just like the cities that I talked about who have dealt with issues themselves, or, for example, the wounded returning soldiers that our military hospitals are dealing with all across the country. And in this case, Music Corps with Yo-Yo Ma, which we had at our Nancy Hanks lecture a few years back, is a great example of how the arts are helping with that healing process. Not just there, but all across the country, and you are connecting with that more and more. In a world that feels increasingly partisan, 2/3 of Americans say that the arts unify our communities, regardless of age, race, and ethnicity, and help them understand other cultures better. We are better served with the arts in our lives than without them. And that's what the data seems to say. We know that, but the American public seems to be saying that as well. Earlier this year, after 7 long years of work on your parts and on the part of our own advocacy team, I had the honor to be asked to represent you at the White House for the signing ceremony of the Every Student Succeeds Act, and to represent the arts. And it includes the recognition in federal legislation of the arts as a core academic subject. It's a major accomplishment, and all of you made it possible. And this law removes some impediments to money flowing at the state and local level. Former Secretary of Education Arne Duncan also said this is important because arts education is an equity issue and a civil rights issue and in America today, and he is not alone in that assessment. It was just under 2 years ago that Ferguson erupted in anger after the death of Michael Brown, and in reaction, artists created pieces like The Mirror Casket. DeAndrea Nichols and others worked on that, and All Hands on Deck, Damon Davis. Because of art and creative expression, the rising rage forced many to confront what it means to be and not to be privileged. For us, at Americans for the Arts, that has meant 2 years of research, engagement, soul-searching, led by our chairman of the board, Abel Lopez, and Margie Reese, the head of our board, Cultural Equity Board Task Force, on the part of our board and staff together to determine how we can be working more strongly and intentionally toward cultural equity. And I'd like to acknowledge Abel and Margie by asking them to stand for that work. And I also want to acknowledge some of the staff who have been at the office leading the effort, particularly Clay Lord again, and some members of the Staff Culture Committee. All the arts, all the people has been our steadfast declaration about equitable access to the transformative power of the arts. It is an aspirational phrase and one we all strive to meet. Access to a full creative life is essential to a healthy and democratic society, and where there are systems of power that grant privilege and access unequally in a way that creates inequity and injustice, we must all stand up to change them. Our core belief that all people should have equal access to the arts has never wavered, but the political, social, and economic circumstances in which we carry out our mission are constantly evolving for all of us. So we must all evolve too. We owe a debt of gratitude to our board members, staff members, members of the field who have, since our founding in 1960, continued to place issues of diversity, inclusion, and equity front and center. People way back in the 60s like Billy Taylor and Ralph Ellison and Harry Belafonte who were on the board, and I thank them for all of us. In April of 2016, having engaged more than 3,000 stakeholders, our board unanimously approved a new statement of cultural equity to guide us through our action, hone our focus, and set up mechanisms to hold ourselves accountable. This is the overarching statement, headline statement, and to support a full creative life for all, Americans for the Arts commits to championing policies and practices of cultural equity that empower a just, inclusive, equitable nation. What's that mean? Well, thank you. What it means is that we will be working internally to build the skills necessary in our staff board and advisory bodies to be culturally conscious organization, to be one, and to work to understand and fix the inequities that may be inside our policies and systems, and commit the time and the resources to increasing opportunity for our staff board and advisory bodies in this way over time. The folks who we're working with internally, our internal staff committee has worked very, very hard. I thank them, and we're also getting a chance to have a consultant help us, Carmen Morgan of Art Equity. And so whatever we learn, we'll play it back to you. And whatever we're able to change, we'll let you know. It is ongoing. The work has already sparked new hiring policies in our organization, access to training that wasn't there before, and we'll see more action once we have the internal assessment done in September. But we're also trying to work outside as well, with you and whoever it might be valuable to work with. We're working to help make sure everyone we serve has access to the training they need, improve and widen the cultural leadership pipeline, continue to create and share equity-related research, and advocate for public and private sector policy at the intersection of arts and equity. The newly released local arts agency census that we did has begun to give us all a better understanding of the current LAA field and the work that needs to be done there. It tells us that you, like we, know that there's more work to be done. So, for example, we know that 1 out of 3 local arts agencies think that they currently have an appropriate level of diversity in their organization. 1 out of 3. We know that 2 out of 3 local arts agencies say that they're actively working to increase the diversity of those that they reach. 3/4 of you have policies in place to consider diversity in grant review processes, and 1/3 of you have already adopted a formal diversity or equity policy. You've been out front on this work, and we want to support you. That's why we're happy to be starting the process by embarking on 3 new large-scale efforts. the first of what we assume will be many. So one of them is Equity 360. The first, a program designed to compile research, training, resources, and support for you to help you make your work more equitable. We're launching that program this summer with a first module on equitable grant making, developed by our Animating Democracy program with the support of the Nathan Cummings Foundation, and we'll be developing other categories of work in the coming years. We have a project with Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Marketing Initiative, coming up that will be a model that we'll learn from and share. Collaboration with the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts that pilots a 5-year capacity building initiative for arts marketers in that state. Trainers will work with a specific mandate to work in rural and suburban communities, and specifically with culturally specific organizations. And we hope to expand that model in other states over time. And the third is called Title I in the Arts. As an outgrowth of the Arts Education State Policy Pilot Program, we and our local and state partners are scaling up efforts to use the arts as a mechanism for achieving Title I goals. 3 states have already shown leadership in statewide implementation thanks to policy and advocacy efforts of members at the California Alliance for Arts Education, the Arizona Citizens for the Arts, and the New Jersey Arts Education Partnership. Ultimately, this work could unlock billions of dollars to use arts education as a mechanism for ensuring an equitable, excellent education for all. We commit to doing more of that kind of work. And in addition, we'll be expanding the number of scholarships we offer, re-examining our leadership programs, and to ensure we aren't reinforcing privileged or discriminatory systems, and continuing our commitment to broad, highly accessible digital and regional field education for our members through the arts. We look forward to supporting you in your journey along these paths as we try to do our part to carry forward toward fulfilling the promise of all the arts and all the people. As some of you no doubt know, when I was in high school, a mile from here, I studied ancient Greek. It was a Jesuit high school. I wasn't good at it, so I only studied it for a day and a half. But like any good arts administrator, I came away not with a new language, but with a quote. And the quote is the oath of the Athenian citizen. The quote is this: "We commit this city to be not as good as, but better than, not as beautiful as, but more beautiful than when it was committed to us." That's what the arts do. That's what you do. So in these coming days, celebrate the power of the arts to help transform communities and to ensure a full creative life for all. We have a little poster to that end that is there for all of you. Reflect, evolve, consider a revolution. The arts have power, and as one of our early pioneers, Robert Gard, said, the arts can change the face and the heart of America. Martin Luther King added by saying that the arc is long. So let us all progress together along it, find justice and equity that exists on the other side. Thank you. And there's more of me. Abel, do you want to come up and join me here? I want to invite Abel Lopez, the chairman of Americans for the Arts Board of Directors, to join me on stage. And as Abel approaches, I'd like to thank all of you who participated in nominating or voting for this year's Leadership Award recipients. The annual Leadership Awards are presented each year in conjunction with the annual convention to recognize the achievements of individuals, organizations, or programs committed to enriching their communities through the arts. So, Abel, the first one.
Thank you, Bob. It's an honor to present these awards today. But before doing so, I'd like to ask the members of the Americans for the Arts Board of Directors, as well as the members of the United States Urban Arts Federation Executive Committee, the State Arts Action Network Council, the Arts Education Council, the Public Art Network Council, the Emerging Leaders Council, and the Private Sector Council, and our state captains to stand and be applauded for the dedication to advancing the arts in America. Please stand. Thank you all for the work that you do, not only for Americans for the Arts, but also in your communities as well. And now on to the awards. First, I'm happy to present the Arts Education Award, recognizing transformational leadership in arts education through strategic planning, programming, and partnerships to achieve community goals. The 2016 Arts Education Award goes to Laura Perilli, CEO of Advestors. Ms. Perilli is being presented with this award for leading a collective impact effort that has transformed the delivery and funding structures of arts education to Boston's public school students. On behalf of the Americans for the Arts Board of Directors and the Arts Education Network, I am pleased to invite Ms. Perilli to come forward and accept the 2016 Arts Education Award.
The 2000, actually, you just did that. So, the Aline Valkanis State Arts Advocacy Award recognizes an individual at the state level whose arts advocacy efforts have dramatically affected the political landscape. The 2016 Aline Valkanis Award goes to Brad Erickson. Now, I'm going to say a little bit more about Brad. He's so enthusiastic that he's right here. So, but let me just say, he's the executive director, for those of you who don't know him, of the Theater Bay Area. He is receiving this award today for his exemplary work in planning and implementing a long-term recovery plan for state arts funding in California, which has led to a nearly 600% increase in funding, and for his leadership in the State Arts Action Network. And that figure is revised, right? What's the new figure?
The new figure, we just have 10.8 million more on top of that.
So on behalf of the American Theater Arts Board of Directors and the State Arts Action Network, I'm pleased to invite him to come. He's already here. And to present the award to him. So.
I'm pleased to present now the Michael Newton Award, which is given each year to honor an individual for innovative development of private sector partnerships for the arts and/or long-term achievement in effective and creative fundraising techniques. The 2016 Michael Newton Award goes to Flor Maria Garcia, President and CEO of United Arts of Central Florida. In her more than 30 years in the field, Flor Maria has creatively leveraged millions of private sector dollars for the arts, raising money for arts programs for low-income, inner-city schools, public art projects, grants for local arts organizations around the country, and much, much more. It is my honor and privilege on behalf of the Americans for the Arts Board of Directors and the Private Sector Network to invite Ms. Garcia to come forward and accept the 2016 Michael Newton Award.
Each year, the Public Art Network is given to recognize an individual or organization that demonstrates innovative contributions and/or exemplary commitment to the field of public art. This year, the Public Art Network has chosen one of the true giants of the field to receive the award, Barbara Goldstein. Barbara, yes. Barbara is receiving the PAN Award for her years of dedicated leadership in the advancement of public art. She's a visionary who continues to advance the field through her planning and policy work around the country. And on behalf of the Americans for the Arts Board of Directors and the Public Art Network, I'm pleased to invite Barbara Goldstein to come forward and accept the 2016 Public Art Network Award.
The American Express Emerging Leaders Award is given each year to a visionary and/or young arts leader who demonstrates an ability to engage and impact his or her community. Thanks to the generous support of the American Express Foundation, the Emerging Leaders Award also comes with a check for the winner. The 2016 American Express Emerging Leaders Art Award goes to Octavia Yearwood, arts educator and CEO director at Team O. Ms. Yearwood was selected for this year's award for her establishment of collaborative youth development programs between arts and non-arts organizations that have elevated, inspired, and empowered young people. On behalf of American Express, the Americans for the Arts Board of Directors, and the Emerging Leaders Network, I am pleased to invite Ms. Yearwood to come forward and accept the 2016 American Express Emerging Leaders Award.
So congratulations to Octavia, and thank you to the American Express Foundation for your ongoing underwriting of the American Express Emerging Leaders Award. The Selena Roberts Autumn Award is given each year to recognize an individual working in arts management who has made a meaningful contribution to his or her local community and who exemplifies extraordinary leadership qualities. Selena was a former chair of our organization. I'm honored to present the 2016 Autumn Award to Michael Spring. Michael is the fabulous, for anybody who knows him, director of the Miami-Dade County Department of Cultural Affairs and a true giant in the field. He has his 33 years of service, 33 years, to Miami-Dade, where he is, he's been there for that time, where he's credited for transforming Miami's cultural scene along Biscayne Boulevard and throughout many neighborhoods and communities in South Florida. And his ongoing guidance, innovation, and celebration of the role of the arts and cultures in communities across the United States make him a truly fitting recipient of the Autumn Award. He's also been a dedicated board member of Americans for the Arts for over 13 years. We wanted to give this award to him before, and we thought maybe he'll rotate off and we'll give it, but we can't let him go, and we have to give him the award. And so we are grateful to him for his service to his community and to the nation. So on behalf of the Americans for the Arts Board of Directors and the National Endowment for the Arts, our partner in this award, I am pleased to invite Michael Spring to come forward and accept the 2016 Selena Roberts Autumn.
In other years, this would be where our awards presentation would end. But this year, in conjunction with the release of To Change the Face and Heart of America, a new collection of writings on the arts and communities by Robert E. Gard, we're pleased to inaugurate a new annual leadership award. the Robert E. Gard Award. And at this time, I would like to invite Mario Gard Ewell to please join us on stage to present the award. Robert Gard was one of the founders of the local arts movement in America, and his foundational writing has strongly influenced the way that local arts agencies and other organizations have engaged with their communities over the last 60 years. Gard was a champion of the role of the arts in the creation and maintenance of healthy, vibrant, equitable communities. And it is in that spirit of the Gard Award celebrates exemplary work at the intersection of the arts and community life. It aims to raise up projects from the last year by individuals, organizations, or consortia working to cross the arts into other aspects of community life in a meaningful and measurable ways.
Every field needs its heroes and stories, and the Gard Award aims to celebrate some of the great local work you all are doing and bring these people to a national spotlight, which is why it is entirely driven by you. Earlier this year, 8 amazing projects were nominated for consideration, and you were invited to read about them and then vote for the one that you felt best showcased the integrated role of the arts into a local community. On behalf of the Americans for the Arts Board, I am pleased to announce that this year's winning project, as selected by you, is the Arts Memphis Community Engagement Fellows Program. So I'm very happy to invite Linda Steele, Chief Engagement and Outreach Officer at Art Memphis, up here to accept the Robert E. Gard Award on behalf of the Arts Memphis Community Engagement Fellows Program. I was lucky enough to know Robert Gard, and Mario, his daughter, served on our board of directors in the past, and it's an honor to be up here with the first recipient of the award. Well, let me tell you a bit more about the Fellows Program. The project, which brings together artists, arts managers, neighborhood leaders, and residents, and the point of the work is to create arts-based projects that drive change in living conditions and empower residents in disenfranchised Memphis neighborhoods. It exemplifies the positive impact that the arts can have in the lives of individuals and communities. By flipping the script of typical community engagement models and encouraging deep, sustained engagement through classes, fieldwork, site visits, the Fellows Program encourages not just talking, but action. So congratulations to Linda, Arts Memphis, and all of the other partners in the community.
Congratulations to all of this year's Leadership Award winners. It is fitting to follow that celebration of leadership in communities through the arts with today's opening keynote. Diane Paulus is a strong believer in democracy and the democratization of art. The Terry and Bradley Bloom Artistic Director of the American Repertory Theater at Harvard University, a Tony Award-winning director, and one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people in the world, Ms. Paulus is a tireless advocate for breaking down barriers and telling more stories. She's currently represented not by one, but 2 shows on Broadway, Waitress and Finding Neverland, and also directed the Tony Award-winning revivals of Hair and Pippin, the Tony-nominated Porgy Bess, Prometheus Bound, The Donkey Show, and most recently, Eve Ensler's new play, In the Body of the World, which asks, as many of Paul's productions do, fundamental questions about who we are and how we interact with each other and the world. Following her speech, Ms. Paulus will be joined on stage by Risa Wilson, the Director of Philanthropy at the Robert Rauschenberg Foundation, which focuses strongly on the role of the artist in the world, and is the founder of the Laundromat Project, which uses art and culture to build community networks, solve problems, and address issues in our communities. And now, we will please welcome Diane Paulus.
I am so honored to be with you here today, and I am deeply moved, as I'm sure we all are, by all the people who have spoken this afternoon and to all the people who have been recognized for their incredible dedication to art in America. For several weeks now, I have been planning my speech in my head, but all of that changed last Sunday. As I faced committing words to paper over the last few days, I found it hard to consider speaking to you about anything related to America without reflecting on the tragedy in Orlando. So I will begin by sharing questions that my colleague at Harvard University, Professor Timothy McCarthy, who is the director of the Sexuality, Gender, and Human Rights program at the Carr Center for Human Rights Policy at the Kennedy School, recently articulated in the wake of last weekend's massacre. Why does it feel like we've been here before? And why does it feel like it's getting worse? Will people even care that so many queer people were murdered? Do people realize that this is the same week as the one-year anniversary of the Mother Emanuel massacre in Charleston? Did the shooter know it's Pride Month? Does anyone care that President Obama has to deliver yet another speech, the 18th of his presidency, I think, about mass shootings? Will any of our elected officials or presidential candidates risk or stake their political careers on comprehensive, not just common sense, gun control legislation? Will anyone connect the dots between the transphobia sweeping the nation, the backlash against LGBTQ rights, the assault on Black lives, the anti-immigrant and anti-Muslim rhetoric of Donald Trump, and this massacre on Latinx night at a queer club? Why hasn't there been one LGBTQ leader interviewed on any major cable news network so far? And finally, why is it so easy to blame everything on Islamic extremism, and by ghastly extension, all Muslims, as a convenient divide and conquer strategy to avoid holding all Americans accountable for the things we need urgently to confront: homophobia, transphobia, toxic masculinity, racism, violence against women, shitty parenting, gun addiction, cowardly politicians, media ineptitude, mental health, US imperialism, the NRA, public health failures, and all religious bigotry. After all, Omar Mateen was one of us, born and raised. I make theater because it is a forum to ask questions, to live inside questions, to push boundaries with questions, to provoke with questions, to challenge with questions. I always tell young directors, you do not need to have the answers. Your job is to ask the questions. And if the theater you create is banal, it is most likely because you have not asked a big enough question. I also make theater because theater can take us to places we've never been before, to worlds that are not familiar, to perspectives and stories that are not our own. Through the use of narrative and character, we can achieve empathy, which can lead us to identify with a point of view that is not our own. Living in the world at this moment, I cannot imagine an action more vital to our survival, other than love, than empathy. Empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of another, to experience from within another person's frame of reference, to get inside their skin. We live in an age of information overload. Within seconds of any event in our world, we have immediate access to images, facts, eyewitness accounts, videos that replay events over and over until they become emblazoned in our memories. And then what happens? All too often, we become numb from this constant barrage of information. We actually turn off because we do not know how to process all this information, especially when it is bleak and horrifying. Drew Faust, president of Harvard University, in making her case for college, said, "College teaches students to slow down, to convert information to insight, and knowing to understanding." When I read those words, I thought to myself, that is exactly what the arts are on the planet to do. We do not deliver just information. The arts are on the planet to catalyze a deeper discussion than what we hear every hour on our news programs. The arts seek to transform our audiences. We do this by making people think and feel in complicated, messy, and human ways. When working at our best, we stimulate dialogues that can actually lead to the possibility of change and to building a sense of community that brings with it the power to heal. What has fueled my work over the last 8 years as artistic director at the American Repertory Theater is the investigation of how the theater can be a catalyst for a larger civic engagement with the world around us. Don't get me wrong, making the art takes a lot of time, care, and resources. That alone is a full-time job. But the ART has become a vibrant and vital epicenter for our audiences, artists, and staff, because we do not focus solely on the 2 hours traffic of our stage. We have experienced that the work we do has the most transformative impact when we have redefined the theatrical event to include what happens before, during, and after the performance itself. For several seasons now, the ART's Act Two series of curated discussions has invited audience members to connect the work on stage to the wider world. We purposefully use the term Act Two because we view this event as an essential part of the theatrical performance. When it is called Act Two, the ushers and production staff do not view this time as extra. They do not look at their watches and clock this post-show time as an addition to what they are normally asked to do. Our Act Twos are directed as if they were part of the show. ART stage becomes a public forum for audiences, artists, activists, and scholars who work together in dialogue to connect the themes of each production to contemporary conversations in politics, science, and beyond. This program began after our world premiere production of Prometheus Bound, written by Stephen Sater and featuring music composed by System of a Down lead singer and songwriter Serge Tankian. The play leveraged the ancient myth of Prometheus against modern representations of tyranny. Act Two placed audience members in dialogue with representatives from Amnesty International, who raised awareness and invited audiences to take action on behalf of modern prisoners of conscience. Inspired by these discussions, we continue to search for new ways to make these conversations around the work even more central to our programming. For our 2014 production of Witness Uganda, audiences engaged in Act Two conversations with individuals from diverse backgrounds and occupations, including UNICEF, Mass General Hospital, scholars from Harvard, BU, and beyond. As we built this show and planned these conversations, the Parliament of Uganda was writing and considering to pass the now notorious Uganda Anti-Homosexuality Act, which proposed the death penalty, later amended to life imprisonment as punishment for homosexuality. Our first preview was on February 4th, 2014. This bill was signed into law by the President of Uganda on February 24th. Our conversations around this piece showed me how quickly and how forcefully connections can arise if given the space. And I don't mean that American audiences became aware of this issue in Uganda. There were Ugandans seeking political asylum at performances of this show. And though this particular bill was overturned, our staff became dramatically aware of just how powerful a forum the theater can be. Our discussions emphasized connections between the Ugandan bill and lasting anti-gay policies both abroad and here in the US, connections and conversations that continued into future seasons. And through community building events throughout the rehearsal process, including a concert-style performance at a church, ART formed lasting connections with the Ugandan community in Waltham, Massachusetts, the largest community of Ugandans in the United States, a fact which no one at our theater was aware of until this production took place. We repeated this fully integrated discussion model most recently in the production I directed of Eve Ensler's In the Body of the World, an adaptation of her critically acclaimed 2013 memoir of the same name. As an activist and artist, Ensler has spent her life speaking out about the female body and fighting for an end to violence against women and girls. While working in the Congo, where war continues to inflict devastating violence on women, she was diagnosed with stage 4 uterine cancer. This diagnosis erased the boundaries between Ensler's work and her own body. A solo piece performed by Eve herself, the show followed her journey through the diagnosis, treatment, and healing from cancer, as well as her work with City of Joy in the Congo, an education center for victims of sexual violence in that country's ongoing civil war. Our Act Two conversations for In the Body of the World, again held each evening as a true part of the performance, brought audiences literally onto the stage to explore a garden installation and then to sit on pillows on the stage and join in conversation with an incredible range of guests: surgeons from the Mayo Clinic, Congolese activists, doctors from the Harvard Medical School, trauma specialists, and scientists and experts on the environment. Post-performance talkbacks have been part of our theatrical landscape in America for years. What I believe makes our conversations powerful and different is the deep integration of these conversations with the artistic work. While a challenge to produce and publicize, this was something new for our staff, for our artists, for our audiences, I have experienced how these conversations reach a depth I had not heard at a theater discussion before. And as we try to exercise our mission to expand the boundaries of theater, we are constantly looking for ways to harness the tremendous collective energy generated by a once-in-a-lifetime performance, to use that energy to fuel collective examination, education, and confrontation. The visceral experience of a performance or of any work of art activates people's passions and experiences in totally unique ways. Climate change activist and author Naomi Klein, who has twice been a member of an Act Two conversation at ART, has argued that as a society, we currently lack the collective spaces in which to discuss current challenges related to environmental catastrophe, human rights, and significant political change. By offering the theater as a space where deep conversation is integrated with a deep artistic experience, by placing our audiences in contact with diverse ensembles, not only of performers, but also of researchers, writers, and change makers from a variety of discipline, we envision the arts filling the need for these collective spaces of conversation and confrontation. Cross-disciplinary, multi-dimensional partnerships are crucial to this mission. In 2014, the ART and the Carr Center for Human Rights Policy at the Kennedy School launched the ART of Human Rights, a groundbreaking collaboration that uses the arts and the humanities to explore some of the most pressing human rights issues of our time. With support from a Mass Humanities project grant and building on the Carr Center's commitment to advancing human rights principles and the ART's mission to expand the boundaries of theater, the Art of Human Rights was designed to foster a new model for community education, civic engagement, and creative expression. Directed and hosted by Professor McCarthy, whose passionate questions I cited earlier, the ART of Human Rights series works in multiple ways. In some cases, it works in tandem with the Act Two model. For a recent theatrical adaptation of 1984, conversations with Alberto Mora, former General Counsel of the Navy, and Juliette Kayyem, a national leader in America's homeland security efforts, engaged the audience in a discussion that connected the onstage portrayal of George Orwell's dark vision with contemporary US policies of detention, interrogation, and homeland security. Another unique aspect of this program, which I think is particularly relevant to our conversations here this weekend, is that our commitment to integrating other disciplines into our artistic practice has in turn enabled collaborators from other fields at Harvard and beyond to incorporate art making in their own work. The two most recent initiatives saw other institutions leading the way in making arts experiences central to their research and dialogue. This past April, the Harvard Law School co-produced an evening of performance and discussion called Plays That Don't Play, the Drama of Lynching. This event featured staged readings of 3 seldom-produced plays written by Black women depicting the lasting impact of lynching on victims' communities. These performances served as the catalyst for interdisciplinary discussion between legal scholars, contemporary playwrights, and the performers themselves. And the Art of Human Rights collaboration with Harvard Center for African Studies paved the way to bring the critically acclaimed Nigerian production Hear Word, Naija Women Talk True, from Lagos to Cambridge. A powerful piece of performance art that combined artistry, social commentary, and true life stories of inequality and transformation. Hear Word bravely examined the cultural and societal norms that oppress and limit African women, and sought to empower women around the world to break taboos of silence and unite to challenge the status quo. The ART of Human Rights has also supported educational programs, such as the Proclamation Project, an 8-week after-school writing program and performance lab for rising high school juniors and seniors from Boston and Cambridge, who are paid to create and perform an original theater piece from the ground up during a full semester after-school program at the ART. The 2014 Proclamation Project was inspired by Tim McCarthy's The Radical Reader, and the show explored themes of radicalism, protest culture, and the American underground. 2015's ensemble used performance to investigate themes of climate change and ecological disaster. These cross-pollinations, interdisciplinary collaborations, which deepen our art through conversation and activate scholarship through new performances, are coming full circle in next season's production of Transcripts, a verbatim stage play centered on the lives of 6 trans women. Transcripts was initially presented as a joint reading and conversation. In a discussion following the reading, the performers, audience members, and moderators agreed that this diversity of stories was crucial as contemporary conversations around gender and identity continue to evolve. Motivated by the depth and passion of that discussion, this reading event led directly to the decision to continue this conversation and program the play as a main stage production in our 2016-2017 season. My comments today have endeavored to give you concrete examples of the ways in which the ART has sought to use the arts to engage with our audiences as citizens of the world, not just arts lovers, raising and amplifying the issues of our time as a central component of the art we produce. As your speaker today, I was also asked to address the question of how the arts can fuel revolution. To attempt to answer this, I will close by quoting the words of Eve Ensler, who has, through her residency as an artist with us over the last 2 years, has had a lasting impact on transforming and activating our theater. It was thanks to Eve's play OPC, which was a scree against the ravages of garbage on our planet, which resulted in us no longer selling plastic bottles of water at our lobby concession stands. Eve graciously gave the commencement speech at the graduation of our ART Institute MFA students just a few weeks ago. Hearing her advice to the next generation of theater artists made my heart pound. Here are her words. Theater is a method for birthing the way that is not of dominance but connection. You are the future that will birth that way. Your work is to blow our minds open, to rip our hearts into caring, to dance us back into our bodies. You have to be willing to lose everything. You will be risk takers like those we have never known, and you will tell the stories we have never heard because we were afraid to hear them. And you will tell them in a way that opens portals to the possibility of how we will live in a new way. You will be occupied from morning till night with the dilemma of revolution, of changing an entire paradigm that has rested on exclusion, unkindness, profit, destruction, and cruelty. There is no time to be afraid or coy. If you have made a determination to be an artist, you must give everything. You must give up your bodies to the altar of transformation. You must write words that shock, educate, and awaken. You have to be that brave. Sudden, inexplicable shifts in consciousness and action are wildly possible. We are still making or unmaking this world. That's why you are here on this earth right now. That is the reason. Question everything, probe deeper, leave no lie unconfronted, tell every truth you feel you cannot tell, push every boundary, disrupt everything expected, demand inclusion of every story that needs to be told to enlighten our way, and stop worrying about what people think or what they will say or write or review. The gatekeepers will probably not like you. You are not here to be liked. You are here to evoke passion, to provoke memory. You are here to free your audiences into the depth and truth and freedom of themselves. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so that was amazing. Can you hear me, first of all? Great. Yes? No? Can you hear me now? No. Okay, let's. Getting better? Better in the back? All right, fantastic. So good afternoon. My name is Risa Wilson. I'm the Director of Philanthropy at the Robert Rauschenberg Foundation. Really thrilled to be in conversation with you. And what I'd like to do is just kind of talk a little bit about some of the things that you've raised and then open it up to the room. I believe that there are supposed to be some podiums that will show up. Aha, okay, so they're in the front to, okay, this way. I'm like the airline folks. So I think ending with the words of Eve Ensler really brings together so many of the really important points that you just made in connecting the dots. And I think this idea of birthing the way, right? And if you think about how long it takes to raise a child, right? How long it takes to create revolution, and going back to the words of Dr. King about the long arc of justice and of change, right? So how do you toggle between the immediacy of what's happening right now and the longer term processes of change that we're in the business of making, right? Because that's really where art lives. So how do you wrestle with that as you're trying to stay relevant to now and also participate in this process?
I referenced it in my comments, but I think just being awake is such a radical act. And I really learned this from Eve, because it's such a theme of her work, and of course it was such a theme, a personal journey for her, because it was this deep irony that here was this woman who had traveled the world to put herself in the face of the most grave trauma to women around the planet, and yet she hadn't been awake to her own body. And I think this made her personally ask, why is it that we become somnolent, is this word she uses, that we sleepwalk through our lives? So I think we can become overwhelmed by what can we do, how do we solve the problems of the world, what little contribution can we make in the face of such deep crisis that we're living through. But I believe there's something that we as artists can so uniquely do which is to wake ourselves up and to wake up our audiences. To me, that is the essential act, in particular of the theater, because that is the art that I'm involved in, the particular art form. It is so much about becoming present, and we do not live in the present. So I think if we can just even be alive in the moment and attuned to each other and enter a common space and have the courage to not only open our hearts to what we hear on stage, to, as I said, different points of view, but to become aware that there are people to our right and left that we are in a space together with, that even that act is surprisingly radical and can begin a process of change that can have a surprising impact.
That's right. Yeah, I think you've really hit on it, that something that seems very simple, this idea of awakeness, is so outside of our daily practice, outside of our cultural practice. And I think you also pulled on this idea of bravery, right, and courage that is part of artistic practice. And while many of the people in this room may not identify as a practicing artist per se, right, all of us are engaged in this work, and there are leaps that we each have to take, right? And so leaps require being connected to our breath. It means fully inhabiting ourselves. And as you said, in that sort of information onslaught, that is the opposite of what we're trained to do every day. I'd love to shift gears. You really were great about this idea of connecting the dots, of naming the sentiments of hate that are happening right now, and the way that is manifesting with specific groups, and also pulling in the sort of perpetual challenging of the sovereignty of women's bodies. And I think on a positive side, you've really figured out a way to normalize women in leadership positions, and normalize women's power. And so I'd love for you to talk about what it means to have an all-women artistic team for Waitress. Yeah.
Yes, I would love to think I've normalized it. I think there's a lot of work to be done, and what Risa is referring to is a fact that was actually pointed out to us when we were preparing the production of Waitress for Broadway, that we were the first all-female creative team in Broadway history, representing directing, choreography, composing, lyrics, and book writing, that this had never happened in Broadway's history. So I've had quite an experience with this landmark. It has ranged from a wonderful attention on it, which for me has led me to answer many questions about what this means. And I've answered it repeatedly by saying that every woman is in her position on our team for this production because they are the best person at their job. This was not a casting agenda of having just women in these roles, but here we are, 2016, and guess what? There are women at the top of their field in every one of these areas. And it being noted as a landmark was more than anything important, because as I was encouraged by the women ahead of me, I could visualize that path. And this being noted is important to send signals out to the next generation of theater artists, so they can look and see those doors are open. There are not limitations to who's invited to the table or who's invited to the party. Having said that, I've also experienced the backlash, you know, where all of a sudden there was a discussion happening in the media that we were using this as a marketing tactic, and, you know, women are not, in our show, which deals with domestic violence, you know, that isn't it too bad that women's material has to always position women as victims? And I found that deeply ironic because there were many shows on Broadway this season that dealt with issues of violence against women. Color Purple, Eclipsed, Blackbird, Spring Awakening, it goes on and on. This was a discussion that was not really happening in the New York press. And you know what? 1 out of 3 women in America encounters some form of sexual violence, intimate partner violence. 1 out of 4 men encounter this. It's an issue in all these plays and productions because it's happening.
And
It's not because women want to be victims. So I think it's complicated. And then, just to close, the stats on Broadway in particular are really, really bad. They reflect the stats in women's leadership across so many businesses and industries. But I can just tell you, I wasn't really sure. I knew I was sort of not, I was not the common person, female, directing on Broadway, and I finally had an assistant look it up so I could actually be accurate. And they don't publicize these statistics. So it was literally looking up all the records. Out of the last 5 years on Broadway, I was the only woman directing a musical on Broadway for 3 of those 5 years. So I knew it was bad, but I really, when I looked at that, I thought we have major work to do that is far from normal.
Right.
1 out of 13 musicals, 1 out of 14 musicals, 1 out of 16 musicals. I'm the only woman. So I'm only hoping that what was a landmark this year will become the norm.
Yeah. But just to put a fine point on that, I think, in the same way that love is a verb, normalizing is a verb, right? Yes. And so it's that messy work of what will it take to get there? Yeah. And unfortunately, that means having to deal with some nonsense in the process. But I think it is incredibly important that the nature of your teammates and yourself being in those leadership positions was because you are the best at what you do, right? As opposed to it being a quota, right? That it's about because we're good. That's why we're here, and what that looks like. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, similar to this conversation around powerful women, is I know that you are working with Anna Deavere Smith in her next project, and I'm particularly interested because the foundation, her project is working on the school to prison pipeline, and the foundation has been focused on artists who are working to address mass incarceration in some form. And so I'd love for you to kind of talk more about that project. Yeah. Sure.
So we are opening our season with a production by Anna Deavere Smith called Notes from the Field. And it is her analysis of the school to prison pipeline, which is a crisis in our educational system in America. And she has done field research in various cities in America, and she will be coming this summer to Boston to add a Boston chapter to the work. And what she does is her signature interviews, which then she verbatim edits and performs in the voice and character of every person she's interviewed. And her interest is not to proselytize. Her interest is to really present all the points of view. So she's interviewed directors of prisons, principals of schools, incarcerated youth, police officers, mothers of victims of heinous crimes. She's trying to put out the dialogue through her empathetic transformation with all these different characters. What I love about this project and why I'm so looking forward to the next experiment in the Act Two that I've described to you today is she, as an artist, said, I want to do this part of the performance and then have the audience break into discussion groups as part of the performance. She experimented with this at Berkeley, where she did the first production of this piece, and felt she hadn't quite cracked it. And I said, well, you're coming to the right place, because we've been doing this with so many of our shows. But it's another level for us, because we've always received the production and sort of approached the artist and said, we'd like to make Act Two with your material. And here was an artist coming to us saying, I want this act two as part of my production, and I want to work it out and make it work. And to be honest, talking about democratizing the art, one of the things I'm the most excited about, and we really don't know how this is going to work. We're really planning every week, every night to be analyzing it. We're going to be breaking the audience. We have 600 seats in our theater into 25-person discussion groups. They have to go someplace in our building for these 20 to 30-minute discussions. And that's what I'm excited about, because I'm envisioning our audience, whose normal experience is to enter the lobby, go to the theater, maybe walk on the stage, as they have in some of our shows. But now, in the middle of a show, they're going to go with a group, they're randomly selected, into our prop shop, into the costume area, into my office, and that's great. Like, the audience should be allowed into my office, into the marketing department's office. I don't know, Anna, if there's space there, but this idea of, letting that audience inhabit our building, and then, of course, the design of the design of that event is then to come back as a unit, as a group. And there is a denouement where Anna performs the last several pieces. And we're now discussing with her if there's a way that what she performs at the end is somehow impacted by the nature of the discussion. We also have certain thinkers and leaders who are interested in maybe once a week doing a 600-person conversation, so that we won't always break the audience into small groups. People like Professor Michael Sandel, if anyone is aware with his work, he's sort of an expert in getting a dialogue going with a large group. So that will be our experiment. So stay tuned to hear how that goes.
And then my last question, just to put a fine point on it. So how do you get it out of the theater? How do you, I know you're bringing folks in, but how do you get it to the same subject matter, to the folks who are the topic? Yeah.
That I really have to throw it over to Risa and her work with the Laundromat Project, if you're not familiar with that, because I think you've taken that very question, and if you're not aware, to say 3 sentences about it.
So Laundromat Project, if you're not familiar, commissions artists who do public art projects in laundromats and other community spaces, largely to tackle these kinds of issues. And it's very much about, I feel incredibly blessed to be part of this sector where we get to have these deep conversations and we get to move from knowing to understanding. And then I go home and my neighbors need a chance to be part of this conversation, right? And we're often talking about people who aren't in these rooms. So Laundromat Project is fundamentally about how to make sure that the people that we're talking about, we're talking with and co-creating with. But the nature of my question wasn't a plug or even, to sort of put you under the bus, but really because that's the wrestling, right?
It is the wrestling.
Your remarks pulled up that this is the power that we have in this room to unpack really messy, complicated issues, but how to make sure that we're not just talking to the choir, as we wrestle with all the time.
I think, and seeing the people who have engaged with communities recognized today in the work in arts education, there's no question it starts with reaching students in schools. And to deepen that engagement so that it's not just students coming off a bus into your theater, but that students are making their own art out of the experience that they might be exposed to at your institution. We've felt that is the most potent way to take artists. When we did Witness Uganda, our composer and writer came to our city 6 months before the production rehearsal began, and they did a school tour. And that's a lot to ask an artist, and sometimes you think, can you even ask that? But we have to, because it is, the full half of the equation of what it means for the art to have impact. So this particular group of, the duo of artists went out for 3 weeks in the school system and met students, talked to teachers, did excerpts of the show in the schools. And it was only until, 4 or 5 months later that the rehearsal proper and the show happened. So I think, ways in which you get the performance out of your building, the way that you get your community engaged, not just while they're there, but afterwards. We did a production of Jung Chang's novel Wild Swans, which is all about the Cultural Revolution. And we had a community chorus, which is something that we've done with many of our shows, very inspired by the model of Cornerstone, where you actually put the community in your show, because it's sort of one of the most palpable ways to say, this is your theater too, in your space. So we had a community chorus of Asian American actors, professional actors, students, people who had never acted before who were in the production. We did many workshops and sessions like these Act Two conversations, not at ART, but in Chinatown, in Boston. And then we also had a community memoir using a technology called the Ziga platform, where people, wherever you were, could log on and kind of account for their own relationship to the Cultural Revolution, their own immigrant experience, and create their own work online, right? So I think this is a big thing all of us at arts institutions has to really think about and embrace. I mean, the technology can be frightening and scary, but I'm very interested in this idea, and it's a weird concept, especially for someone who does the theater, and I've talked to you about what it means to be present in the room, but I am now experiencing at ART that we have audience, we have fans who have never been to our theater. And that's a very unusual concept for a regional theater, right? It's not an odd concept for a rock fan, right? Or a pop music fan.
Right.
You can love Lady Gaga wherever you are in America. You've never been in a room with her, but she's on your wall, you're playing her music, you've made your own art out of her music, you feel connected to her, and maybe you'll save enough money and fly somewhere and see her, or see her when she comes to your town. That idea of an audience as a fan base, which we're now experiencing, and people are becoming our fans because they're getting to know our work through our website, through our videos, through our social media. They're feeling connected. That is something I think we need to embrace. And I'll end by saying I did a talk at Google when I was directing Hair. And this guy from Google stood up, and I'd never thought about it this way, but he said, I feel like the internet, he said, has been the next great hippie movement.
Okay.
I never thought about like the internet as equivalent to the hippie movement, but he said it's allowed a forum for anyone and everyone to speak up. And it's allowed a forum of a democracy to happen. I mean, we know there are flaws with it, and we know there can be a lot of voicing on the internet that the hippies would not approve of. But this idea of looking at how we can, again as artists, use this technological world that we are living in to our advantage to democratize our art form and get the conversation out of our buildings and to and with the people, to all people, as was articulated as one of the missions here.
Well, so to that end, let's actually invite questions from this room and treat it as a forum. So what I would ask people to do is actually come to the mics and just line up. Okay, so, wow. I don't know if people are going to the restroom or coming to the mics, but we have time for about 2 questions. So, this gentleman's, yes, to my left.
Hi there. My name's Alex. I'm with Yerba Buena Center for the Arts in San Francisco. Diane, thank you for sharing your words with us tonight. One thing you talked about was the importance of remaining awake and our role as artists to help other people stay awake. And you seem like someone that's got a lot on your plate. I wonder how you handle that for yourself, as you, as an artist, keep yourself awake.
That's a great question.
I also want to say, because you made me think of it when you said, as artists, and I know so many of you are arts facilitators, and in many ways that's how I think of myself as a director, that my job is to facilitate the art. So I really connect to all of you who make your life's work about that. I think the answer to that question, because I've asked it of myself many times, is that my job as a director, when I am in the room, is to be present. And I often think about the Buddhist saying of to look without desire. And my job, even though I've rehearsed a scene over and over and over, and I might be watching performers with a lot of desire, like, do it this way, do it that way, no, I wanted it that way. Actually, what I need to do every day as a director is to wash my eyes clean, see for the first time, and be present. And when you do that, it is unbelievably regenerating. It is a form of meditation. It is a form of being in the zone. It is a form that replenishes you because time stops, right? And we've talked a lot about, the fast times that we feel we live in with all this information overload. So things slow down. And I think for me personally, that is how, if I didn't have that, I think I would become overwhelmed and burn out rather quickly. But that daily practice is what has, I think, given me the sustenance.
This is more of a thank you. My name is Susan Collings, and I direct the Art Connection, all female staff, all female volunteers, an organization in Boston. I am a subscriber to the American Repertory Theater and have been for years. I've been going to the American Repertory Theater for decades since I worked at Harvard, and Tim McCarthy is a very good friend of mine. So I just want to express a very sincere thanks. He is one of the most inspirational people I know, and the fact that you gave him such great props and everything you said about the shows, from the first preview of Waitress I went to going up on stage for Eve Ensler's show, was very, very touching as an audience member. So from my perspective, you're really doing what you say you are doing, and sincerely, I want to thank you.
Thank you. There's one question.
Yes. We will close with you.
So we're going to close on a somewhat light note. There's been a lot of heavy thinking and heavy talking here today. And I don't know, Diane, if you'll be willing to answer this, but I know you'll be able to finesse your way through it. Could you tell us a little bit about the difference of directing women versus directing men?
I'm going to answer that this way. And it has to do with Waitress, and I'll tell you something about Waitress. Waitress is a musical whose protagonist is a woman. And guess what? The two biggest supporting roles around her are also women. There are male roles in this production, but they are really there to support the arc of the woman's story. And it was not easy to cast these roles. And what I mean by that is the number of men who would not consider this job was staggering to me. Having said that, the wonderful male performers that are in these roles that have developed this production with me are there because they get that they are in service of this woman's story. And they articulate that. And they know that. So to me, to answer your question, it's less about a male or a female performer being different, but a performer who understands the generosity of contribution to a story, that is not necessarily yours. And I am really, so moved by the men in Waitress, because there's been a lot of attention on the women, and they just do their work every night and serve this working class diner waitress's story, and in that way show really that creativity is born of an open heart and a generous creative spirit.
Very, very filled with finesse.
Yeah.
So thank you for being generous. I think that's all the time that we have.
Great.
And I think we're being
Thank you
kicked
so
off the
much.
stage.
Thank you.
Thank you again to our keynote speakers and facilitator. And thank you also to Bob for his remarks and vision for the organization as well. We also want to acknowledge the mayor and Julie Burrows for their being such fantastic local hosts and also visionaries with respect to the inclusion of the arts in communities and the engagement of community in the arts. And congratulations to all of the Leadership Award winners, and thank you all for being here. I want to just give you a few reminders. You should have received a printed version of the New Americans for the Arts Statement on Cultural Equity, which I hope you'll read and bring back to your community with you. You can find out more about the Statement on Cultural Equity on the Americans for the Arts website, and can also join a session that Margie Reese will be facilitating at 4:45 today, specifically about the statement and the broader pursuit of cultural equity. One of the many sessions related to equity throughout the conference program. I hope you will join us for that. Please don't forget to pick up your free commemorative letterpress poster at the membership desk, and make sure to check out the bookstore where we have many new great books this year, including the one I mentioned earlier, To Change the Face and Heart of America by Robert Gard, edited by his daughter Mario Gard Ewell. You'll find the bookstore in amongst all the fantastic vendors that we encourage you to visit on your next break and beyond out in center stage. We've got a great program for the rest of the day with 10 fantastic breakouts this afternoon. Check out your program for more, and don't forget to join us for the opening reception tonight from 7 to 9 p.m. at the top of the hub. To get there, you don't even need to go outside. Just cross the Prudential Center, which is attached to the hotel on level 2, and watch for the signs and staff to guide you up to the top. Just before the opening reception, you can also meet with Bob and Nina at the Arts Action Fund reception and fundraiser in the Independence Ballroom to learn more about ongoing advocacy efforts. And after the opening reception, make sure to check out some of the fun late-night programming and a very special jam session that is all curated by none other than Bob Lynch. Conversation with Anya Grundman, creator of NPR's Tiny Desk Concerts, and other surprise guests, a reunion set with Bob's Boston-born high school band, the Rising Suns, and the annual jam session. That all starts at 9, so be right back here at the hotel and don't miss it. Now go enjoy the convention, meet each other, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Thank you.